frameworks. So this lecture addresses the starting point for frameworks. We're going to use a bunch of different tools for frameworks. I'm going to break this down as simply as I can get it. Starting from kind of ground up, what is a framework? So a framework, very simply, is just a 12-column structure that we're going to use pre-made with CSS to kind of create a little bit of ease of use for us as a web designer designing a page. It's a shortcut, it's kind of a cheat, and it's great. So this is one of the frameworks we're going to use for starters called Toast. All this thing is, as it says here, is a 12-column grid. 6 columns, 9 columns, as many columns as you want. This thing's pretty easy to use. So let's use this grid, this pre-cooked CSS grid, to create a very simple page layout. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Make this real easy. This Toast framework, which you can just Google Toast framework to get to it, or you can go to the URL up top here. You can dandean.github.io/toast. Go to that page. Scroll down to the bottom. There'll be a button called Download Quick Start CSS. Click that button. Now it doesn't download anything. That's fine. It's going to open up the CSS for this grid in a new window. Okay, this is all of it right here. This is it. Okay, it's just a bunch of grid, if you look at it, grid code with percentages. All right, so what we're going to do, copy it, fire up brackets, right? And you can go for a starter HTML page. I'm going to go ahead and use the index page that I've got in here left over from the previous lecture. And I'm going to do a little file save as to get my HTML page set up. This is going to go into a week 4 folder. And I'm going to call this index.html. That's fine. And I'm going to take a new style sheet, paste that in there. That's my my code from the website I just copied, right? If we notice, that's quite a bit of code, 300 lines of code. File, save as. And I'm going to save that into the same folder, my web 2, week 4. Again, I could start, again, a CSS subfolder is a good idea. And I'm going to call this style.css. And the good thing is, since I went ahead and named that style CSS in a CSS subfolder, I keep that the same thing every time I make a website. So now it's all connected, which is great. All right, so now that I've got the CSS here ready to go, I've got my external style sheet for my Toast grid, and I've got a basic HTML page with some very simple stuff on it. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the columns that I created previously out of here, and I'm going to make some new columns. So let me get rid of some code. All right, I'm going to start off with this, which is very, very basic. External style sheet link. I've got my title tag named. I've got a basic div tag as a wrapper, which I'm going to add some stuff to later. So first things first, let's make some content. So I'm going to have a 3-column structure. Let's do what we did in a couple weeks ago, except let's use this Toast grid for it. So I'm going to say column 1, column 2, and column 3. Now again, remember by default, if we launch this thing in a live preview, these are all going to be on the same line because they're inline elements and I don't really have any code separating them, right? So 1, 2, 3. Now again, I can't control the width of the columns, any of that stuff, because there's no code on it. So let's grab the code. Now how do we get the div code for this? These frameworks come in 2 pieces. I've grabbed the CSS, but there needs to be a front end kind of an interface for this, as an HTML chunk, right? So with Toast and with some of these other grids, check this out. In the style sheet, if you go right here, line 14 of the style sheet, this right here, if you notice, is not CSS, it's HTML. This is the HTML you use to create your columns. Okay, now really important here. It's a basic premise with HTML and CSS. I talked about it before. This is where it becomes really important. This first class is grid. This is our wrapper. It opens and closes around our columns. You always want to have a wrapper around your columns, right? That's an important premise. The other frameworks we're going to get into later, like Bootstrap and some other stuff, will always do that. They'll have some kind of row code, right? It carves out a row, and then it carves out your columns inside that row. I'll elaborate on that later. But suffice it to say, we're going to grab this code. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to my index page, and I'm going to paste it above my columns. Okay? So I'm going to paste it above there because I'm going to be taking my column content, the text, and I'm going to mill it into a column, right? Now, I want 2 columns. This already says half width column here, but here's kind of a cool thing. Check this out. Let me go back to the website that has Toast on it. Here's the Toast website. Let me go back a notch. If you go to this website, what they've got here is all of the classes you might want already picked out. This is the class names that I would use to get these class widths, right? If I want a grid of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, it shows me what the syntax for that would be. Grid, double underscore col, space, which remember is 2 classes. We've got one class, which is grid double underscore col, and I've got another class, which is grid double underscore col 1 of 5. Okay, these are 12 column frameworks, right? So the fractions are based on 12 column setup. That's a bunch of gobbledygook. The easy way to think of it is a fraction. Half and half of my page. I have a 1 of 2. 1 of 2 means half and half. I need 2 1 of 2s to make 2 columns, right? So I've got a 2 column structure here. If I wanted a 3 column structure, I would need 3 divs, right? So 1, 2, 3. But what I don't want is a 1 of 2, right? The fraction for whatever I'm going to want here, a 3 column grid, I can find in my style sheet, okay? So if you just scroll down, if you look here, this is pretty simple. If we go back to the style sheet, any kind of column you want is already picked out. See, check it out. It goes from 1 to 12. You got 1 of 2, 2 of 4, 3 of 6, 4 of 8, 6 of 12 for the half column layout, right? It's a half fraction. If you want a 3 column grid, you've got 1 of 3, 2 of 6, or 4 of 12 that you could use. I'm going for a 3 column grid, which is a 33% width. I use the 1 of 3, 2 of 6, or 4 of 12. Any one of these are the same thing, so it doesn't matter which one of these I use. That's the nice thing about the versatility of these grids. It's just a fraction. So I can just go 1 of 3. 1 of 3. 1 of 3. Okay? And now I have a 3 column grid. It is a wrapper, 1 column, 2 column, 3 column grid. Save. Live preview, right? Popped our live preview up here. And there we go. Check it out. I have got a 3 column grid. Now, the cool thing about this, now I didn't mill my content into it. I probably should have done that. Let me cut and paste my content in here. Column 1, column 2, column 3. Now I've got my content laid out in there. Let me save that and we'll go back to the web page. Refresh. There's my 3 columns. Now, but check it out. Here's the cool thing. These grids are automatically set up with media queries, which we'll get into later, which have breakpoints, which means when we go down to mobile size, these things automatically stack. They don't squish down, they jump down. It's an adaptive thing, which we'll talk about next week. Let's say I wanted a 4 column grid instead. I decided 3 columns isn't quite enough. All you have to do is copy and paste another div, and then you change the fraction. So take a wild stab in the dark. I'm going to check my CSS sheet here in a second, what I would want for a 4 column grid. I'm going to take a guess. It's going to be 4 because it's pretty logical. 1 of 4. Go back to the style sheet to double check, and we'll see, oh, yep, 1 of 4 is a 25% width, which means 4 columns. So if I save this, go back and check to make sure I've got a 4 column grid, there we go, refresh, 4 columns. See? That automatically stack whenever you crush it down to mobile size. So there's the real benefit of these grids. You can create basically any page layout that you'd want in a matter of minutes. Let's say I want another row of content. Let's say below this 4 column grid, I want another column that's only 2 columns. Yeah, hopefully this seems simple by now. Let's do it real fast. You go back into your HTML You copy the whole row, which remember starts at grid, right? Copy it, paste it below, and you just put in the amount of divs that you want. I only want 2 columns, so I only need 1, 2 divs. I can delete these other 2, right? So I have grid open and close, 1 div open and close for the column 1, div open and close for column 2, 2 columns, right? Change this to a 1 of 2 because I only have 2 columns. Save. Go back to my web page. There we go. 4 columns on top of 2 columns. So in my opinion, the best thing at this point, get your structure mapped out first by using these clean column codes from things like ToastGrid. Pop your columns in there, then put your content, dump whatever you want, pictures or text or videos or whatever inside these columns, and you're done. Build it from the top down, drop your content in, and that's it. So that's the idea of grids, is they just really let you establish a very fast, easy structure. You can see from the CSS that there's all kinds of options available for this thing. What I want you guys to do is get in there and play with it. Try to use this grid. Try to set it up. Try to get your page layout to look decent using this grid instead of doing it by hand. Hopefully it saves you a little bit of time. And as always, if you want to see anything in specific, if you want me to go further into an area, recap something, just send me a message. I can make another video. Hopefully you guys are having an easy time with this. Let me know.